Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Chrome. It's finally time for another doll video, and this time I'm especially excited because this is my first collab. The collab is hosted by Dolls of Amber, and she told us that we can pick any Adventure Time girly and reimagine her. Also part of the collab are Charlie B Dollies, Kara's Customs, Sylphix Studios, Morg's Dolls, Drops Dolls, and of course Dolls of Amber. Thank you Amber for hosting this really cool collab for us, and I feel honored to be part of a collab with so many incredibly talented people. As you probably read in the title, I chose Huntress Wizard. I wanted to pick a character that doesn't have a lot of dolls or fan art, or else I would have probably chosen Marceline, so I just looked at the character list, and to be completely honest with you, I didn't know Huntress Wizard up to that point because I didn't watch all the seasons of Adventure Time, but I immediately thought that her design was very striking and cool and I wanted to work with it. During that time, I had 2 overseas flights that were the perfect opportunity to rewatch the whole series until I realized her major appearances only started season 7 and some of them have over 50 episodes, so at some point I did skip to her episodes. This video is sponsored by my uncle who ordered this G3 Genifier for me and then refused to let me pay him back, so thanks uncle. When I knew I wanted to make Huntress Wizard, I immediately thought of her because of the color and also because of the slanted eye shape. This is also my first G3 doll that is not a budget doll, and I have to say I'm so impressed with the quality and the detail of the clothing and accessories. I want to keep her hair, but it was pretty tangled and shapeless, so I gave it a quick boil wash. It's crazy how much better the hair looks now. I then separate the different colored hairs so that I can reuse them however I like. After that's done, I can remove the face paint with pure acetone. I put the doll's head in boiling hot water to soften it and then pull it off. The skull details need to be sanded off since acetone will melt the plastic on the doll bodies. Then I start removing the hair plugs from the inside of the head. I don't have any gold for her design in mind, so to prep, I prime all the golden parts black. They will be repainted later. I also debated on keeping her tail and making it part of the design, but I am planning on a lot of clothing and a tail would definitely get in the way of that. So I warm it up and pull it off. In case you wanted to know, it is possible to reattach the tail again if you press hard enough. And then I do a bit of cleanup by removing mold lines and sanding everything down. I decided to sand down the molded on panties too, but honestly I don't think I will do that again in the future. It's just too time consuming and super annoying. I fill in her tail hole with epoxy sculpt. I also at this point prepare her antlers. Huntress Wizard's original design has twigs for antlers, but I want to go for real looking ones since I just like the proportions better. I make the base out of some warbler scraps that I always keep, and it has a pretty nice texture that plays into the look. But for the smaller pieces, I decide to repurpose some of the spikes I made for my manticore. And with some extra epoxy, I fill in the gaps. Huntress Wizard has leaves for hair, and I thought about keeping it that way because it's pretty cool, but I decided against it, and honestly the main reason is probably that I just really enjoy doing doll hair, and I also had a very special hair color in mind for her. I have this absolutely beautiful mossy green color. I know I said in my Ice Fairy video that the light blue I used there was my favorite, but I like this one even more, I think. As in most of my videos, I have wefts and I unravel the thread that holds the hair together to use the full length. Once you get the hang of unraveling it, you can pull the hair plug out pretty easily. I paint the scalp a similar color to avoid the lighter color peeking through later, and start stabbing in the plugs. I think right now the 2 shades of green don't go super well together, but I think with some warmer tone shading I will be able to tie it together. I came across this kind of light brown to dark blonde kind of hair in my stash, and I thought it looked pretty nice with the shade of green, so I add some strands of that only to the lowest layer of the hair. This will go on for a little eternity until all the plugs are filled. I fill in the part line extra thick and I need to go pretty far down with it because her hairstyle will be split in 2 halves. I was starting to run pretty low on hair too, but then I remembered that I want a pretty large portion of the front hair to be fairly short, so for that section I started cutting the strands off and using the single strands folded in half. You will see how all of this makes sense later. For now, I fill in the head with some water and heat-proof glue, and then I let that dry and give her a quick boil wash. I have pretty big plans for clothes today. Once again, I'm definitely biting off more than I can chew, but I will make it work to the best of my abilities. I took a lot of inspiration from hunter clothes and I guess kind of hunter fantasy clothes, and I immediately just knew that I wanted her to have a long leather coat. So the first thing I'm going to make are pants, and I want them to be on the shorter side, basically up to the calves, and be tight around there with the rest sort of ballooning around it. In my stag beetle video, I talked about how much Forest Cottage Arts tutorials helped me, so of course I'm using her tutorial again, but this time for the whole pant. I'm not going into too much detail because you can just watch her video, but I'm basically just measuring everything like she says and then widen the legs for the balloon effect. And of course I'm doing the real pockets thing again because now that I did it once, I can never go back. I made a prototype that looked pretty promising, so now I can transfer the pattern to the real fabric. It's going to be brown satin, and yes, it's in almost every video that I have to use some kind of satin, and I really didn't want to use it, but hear me out, my fabric box is overflowing and I desperately need to use the stuff that I have. But I also have a pretty good fabric for the inside of the pockets in there. So here you can see how it will look with the pockets, and I just need to sew everything together. The pockets I do by hand because I wouldn't dare try it with a machine. But once that's done, I pull out my sewing machine, and then you first need to attach both front leg pieces and both back leg pieces. Then you need to sew the inner seams and then the outer seams. And then I also decide to sew an extra piece at the top of the pants that I can fold over as an extra detail. And on that one I can also install the hook to be able to close the pants. I gather the bottoms of the legs with a rubber band so that I can still pull them over the calves, and then I hide that under some cuffs that I am sewing on there too. For her top I first want to make a blouse, and on that one I also want puffed long sleeves. I'm combining Delightful's asymmetrical dress pattern for the sleeves and the bodice of her steampunk Lolita dress. I'm using one of my old blouses that has a creamy color and a super thin material. So first I sew the front sides together and then the shoulder parts. What I didn't sew together is going to be the collar. Then I sew the cuffs on the sleeves. And then the trickiest part, attaching the sleeves to the shoulder part. This still drives me insane sometimes, and to be honest I needed to redo everything I think 2 times until it looked somewhat acceptable. After sewing the last part together, the shirt is finished, but I don't want it to hang over the pants, so I shorten it. In the back I will install 3 tiny buttons. Delightful's pattern also has a yoke piece, and I have never heard of the word yoke, but basically I wanted something like that anyway, like a leather belt with straps and buckles on it, so I used that pattern piece. And I am also using real leather, which I wouldn't buy leather to use for doll clothes, but my boyfriend happened to get a new wallet, and this is his old one, which is, as you can see, super beaten up, so it would have gone in the trash anyway. Throughout using this, I was so amazed how this material makes everything look 100 times better, and not to sound pathetic, but I feel like it was kind of an honor to be able to work with it, so I really try to be as resourceful as possible with this. I installed 3 hooks at the back of the belt, kind of like a corset, and the straps are just straight pieces that I cut and sew on. have these tiny buckle pieces that I can attach to the straps. And then a smaller strap will go from the front and over the shoulder to the back. I'm just gluing that one to avoid ugly stitches. Now we're moving on to the shoes, and for those I have some nice leather boots in mind. As a base, I use these Draculaura shoes because I think it's always useful to build around a base that fits, so that you have that part out of your mind. It's the first time I'm using silk clay for the base, which, as I learned from Doll Afterlife, is not foam clay. In hindsight, I think using the Draculaura shoe as a base made my sculpt chunkier than I intended, but I really might be onto something using the silk clay for shoe bases. It is definitely better than using epoxy or green stuff, much more adjustable, flexible, and of course lightweight. Once I'm done with the sculpt, I kind of wing some pattern pieces by trying stuff up with paper, and then I basically just cover the base with leather pieces. I'm gluing them with wood glue, which worked super well with leather. I'm doing some adjustments as I go to the shape of the boots, and when I had covered the front part, I was a little lost on how to get it over the rounded part of the boot. I ended up actually looking up a video on how to make actual leather boots and found out that leather becomes soft and flexible when wet. In this state, you can pull it over the rounded part and fixate it with needles. I needed to pull really hard and adjusted it a lot, and in the end it worked extremely well. I pull the back part of the boots over the same way. All glued and dry, it stays like this and hardens, so I use an X-Acto knife to cut the whole bottom part straight so that I can attach the soles to it. But before I do that, I quickly push in the holes for the shoelaces. And for the shoelaces, I have these tiny leather dark brown bands. I'm such a sucker for doll shoes that you can actually tie with real shoelaces. Moving on to the sole, I cut a fitting shape out of wobbler and press it on while it's flexible so that it can adapt to the shape a bit and not look out of place. I cut further sole details from EVA foam and glue them on. And then it's super easy to just push details into the foam. There's still an ugly gap between sole and boot, so I fill that in with a very long and thin sausage of silk clay. Now we can finally move on to the coat as I announced, and luckily I found a good pattern for it by Hi Dolls Fashion on Etsy. The only thing I was concerned about was the arms not fitting over the blouse, so I wanted to alter it a bit to have larger sleeves. This was my first try where I made the whole armholes bigger, and as you can see, it made the whole thing way too big. I then realized that it's really only the sleeve part that is pretty tight, so the only thing I needed to do was to make the sleeve pattern wider. I did end up buying a new fabric for this part because I don't think I could manage to do this with real leather, and I didn't have enough of it anyway. So this is extremely thin and pretty flexible fake leather that is perfect for what I'm planning to do and easy to work with. It was also pretty cheap. I was super scared to do the sleeves, but this pattern works in a way that you attach all the pieces one by one, which truly is a blessing. If you struggle with sewing as well, I totally recommend it. All the patterns I used are linked in the description. The only part that was a bit hard was attaching the collar, but it turned out pretty well. One detail I wanted to add was rolled up sleeves, so I added a similar piece as with the pants. And then after sewing the outsides, the coat is done. I absolutely love how it turned out. To make all the seams look nice and neat, I glue them flat and then we can move on to the face. Before really starting the face up, I want to take care of the body details. We know that G3 Genifier has scaly legs, but instead of sanding them off, I thought that maybe I can use it. One thing I really like about Huntress Wizard is that she is sort of fused with the forest, so after she sleeps we can see that she is overgrown with mushrooms, for example, and I want to play into that aspect. So here I am repainting the scales to look like pine cones. I think highlighting all the individual scales with warmer and lighter shades of brown is what really sells that look. And after covering it with a wash, I'm really happy with how it looks, and I think it really looks like the legs are made out of pine cone. I do the same for the hands and the claws. I paint silver so that they look like some sort of weapon that you can pull over your fingers. Lastly, I give the antlers more of a natural and textured look. And now we finally reached the face up stage. First I need to give her hair a cover as always. I originally wanted to make her ears pine cones too, but changed my mind because she already has so much brown in her design now and most of her skin color is covered, so I just color matched the ears to her skin tone. And while I'm at it, I also paint the tail hole. I debated a lot on how I wanted to interpret Huntress Wizard's mask. Do I want to make a real one that she can wear, or do I just paint it on? I thought I would probably make one, but I felt that she needed more otherworldly or wizardly elements at this point, so I decided on an ominous shadow over her face that represents the mask. I looked up some inspiration and got stuck with this one, which I sadly don't know who the artist is, so if you know, tell us in the comments. I love how it fades to the top and there's a semi-sharp border at the bottom, so I'm recreating that. To make the border at the bottom sharper, I use one of those netted erasers or whatever you call them. I do some body blushing too before starting the face. This is the first sketch I did, and the worst thing is that I think on camera it looks kinda good, but trust me, it looked really weird and off. So yes, I removed the whole face, including the gradient, and had to do it all again. This time I made sure to sketch the face and be happy with it before putting all the work into the mask. But this is not the end of it. I noticed that my gradient was becoming weirdly patchy and it wouldn't go away no matter how much I blended it. It also seemed to get worse, and my strong suspicion is that I didn't remove the acetone properly. So after removing everything again and washing the head extremely meticulously, this is finally the face up that it's gonna stay. Huntress Wizard has these really big and slanted eyes that I wanted to recreate. She also has these lids as pupils, or it's basically her whole iris shape, which I think is really cool, and I wanted to keep that element as well. I'm giving her downturned lashes that look pretty natural, and since she lives in the wilderness and doesn't seem to be too concerned with her looks, I want her eyebrows to look natural and not plugged or anything too. And now that I'm happy with the overall layout of her face, let's do the gradient for a third time. Genifier's face mold is pretty smiley, which I don't think necessarily fits Huntress Wizard's vibe, so I try to work against that while shading the lips. As with her original design, I want the eyeballs to be a light green and the irises to be a darker green. I have this fluorescent bright green paint, and when I saw it I decided it would be really cool to have the eyes have this eerie bright green glow, and this being the only really unnatural green in her design. It also has this super cool glow effect with UV light, so make sure to stay until the end because I'm gonna show it in the pictures. To give it a little more dimension, I did a lighter underpainting at the bottom of the eyes before covering it with more of the green, and then the irises can be added with a darker green. I did this shimmery effect with some glitter paint on a lot of dolls' eyes. If you watch my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. I wanted to do this here too, but I don't have any green. I did it with gold instead but didn't like it at all, so you'll see me paint over that again. I painted the lashes kind of thick first, but then I saw that it looks much better more subtle like the other eye, so I removed the thick ones. I did use acrylic paint, but luckily it wasn't completely dry yet, and the fluorescent green paint underneath dries glossy, so it wasn't too hard to remove. I'm adding more shading to the eyes, and after repainting the irises, I also add some shading to them. I painted the lashes pretty dark, and now I want to add another layer in a slightly lighter green on top of that. And then I highlight that too with a slightly lighter green than the last one. And finally I add white highlights. I feel like most of my doll's lips are kind of plain, and I thought maybe I can give Huntress a more defined lip look. I tested it out with gouache, which is easily removable with water, and I actually did not like this at all, so I removed it and stuck with my softly shaded lips in a darker green. I defined the space between her lips a little more too, and here I also worked against the smile. And this is how she looks with her hair color. So remember how I talked about the short front hair and the parted back hair? I really wanted her to have this forest spirit kind of vibe, and I don't know why, but too large braided pigtails and messy short front hair with bangs really does that for me, especially combined with the antlers. After managing to braid the pigtails, which was kind of hard, I cut her bangs. I then wet her hair, and with a little hair straightener I curl the lower layers inward and the top layers outward. I feel like I have been doing this outward spiky look for all my recent dolls, so I think the next one should definitely have something very different. Every now and then I cut some strands that still seem a little too long for me. In the back I pulled the hair a bit downwards so that it covers the part where I didn't do the thick rooting. Had I done it all the way down, it would have been too much hair. When I'm happy with the hair, I move on to the other accessories. The boots still need dark brown soles. I add some weathering to the coat with different shades of brown. It looked a bit flat next to the real leather. And of course I need to attach the antlers. I plan it out with needles first and compare if the placement is symmetrical. Then I just push and glue them in. They are not done yet though. I have these pieces of moss or whatever this tree stuff is, and I want them to hang from the antlers. And to cover the rubber hair ties in the braids, I wrap some bands I used for the shoelaces around it. As a huntress who hunts with arrows, I have to also give her a quiver. The way I made this is pretty simple. I used a piece of EVA foam and just glued the edges together with super glue. To the bottom I glue a little circular piece. And then I can just cover it with pieces of leather. I use a piece that was stitched into because I think it makes a cool detail. And that way I could also find a use for that piece. And then I just cut a little strap and glue both ends to 2 metal rings. Those I can then sew onto the quiver. It wouldn't be a real quiver without arrows, so I took some toothpicks and cut into them with an X-Acto knife. I found these plastic leaves last minute. The green color is super unnatural, so I helped that by painting over them. I felt like it would be cute for the arrows to have leaves at the ends instead of feathers, and this way she also has leaves peeking out of her quiver, which looks really cute. To make the toothpicks look more like wood, I put a brown wash on them. In hindsight, I wish I put more effort into making them look less like toothpicks, but I can just always replace them. I also prepared some of the leaves to add to the antlers, but you will see that in the pictures in the end. The last thing I want to make her is a little potion flask to hang on her belt. I felt like we have a lot of Huntress and not so much Wizard in her design, so I wanted to add something magical. I have this little flask and I just fill it with a mix of the same fluorescent green that I used for the ice and UV resin. The two definitely didn't like each other and created some really weird bubbles, but honestly I think it looks really cool for a potion. With a little metal hook that I bent into shape, I can hang it onto one of her belt straps. And here's my reimagination of Huntress Wizard. This is by far the most elaborate outfit I've ever sewn for a doll, and I'm also super happy with how her hair turned out. Let me know what you think of her. Did I do a good job keeping her mysterious aura and her general vibe? Do you like the changes I did to her design? Please also check out all the other incredible artists and their girlies if you haven't yet. All the dolls turned out absolutely beautiful, and thanks again Amber for making it all happen. I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye!